Hello all, I am your host Rodimus Prime. It is Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. Hopefully the vibes are good and your mind is sharp. And today we are going to be reviewing and recapping the fourth episode of the Disney Plus series Kenobi. Now, it's been about a week since this has dropped, so I figured it would be the perfect time to go ahead and review and recap this, as a lot of people have finally seen this. Since I am going to be talking about this episode in a little bit of detail, there will be spoilers ahead, but sit back, relax, and here is my review and recap of the fourth episode of Kenobi. As we start a review, I feel that I would designate this episode as the calm before the storm. The episode that is put into a series to kind of be filler right before all the really good stuff happens. It is also the shortest episode so far at just around 36 minutes. We begin with Obi-Wan being moved to a Bacta tank for recovery, where he begins having flashbacks of his recent encounter with Vader. He awakes abruptly, pulls himself from the tank, and exclaims, "Where is Leia?" I appreciated the fact that when we were getting these flashbacks and these images, we got to see parallels of Ben and Vader in their Bacta tanks. What one was experiencing, the other was experiencing. When we saw Ben's burned hand, we saw Vader's burned cut off hand. I really appreciated that because we got to see what was going on with both men. Next up, we see Leia on Fortress Inquisitorius being interrogated by Reva, and Reva tells her that Obi-Wan is dead, presumably to make her feel vulnerable and alone. We then pan back to Obi-Wan, and it is made clear that the time of the Jedi is truly over, as we are introduced to side characters Wade, Roken, and Sully, all who know who Obi-Wan is, and all not willing to help, knowing it could cost them their lives. We are also shown at this point in time that Obi-Wan is still struggling to use the Force. We then pan back to Reva and Leia, and it is at this point in the series that we get our first real hints of the beginnings of the Rebel Alliance. I also really liked the back and forth between Leia and Reva that was shown during this episode. It had a really good dynamic, and it had really great character work between the two of them. Next up, we see Obi-Wan sneak onto the Fortress Inquisitorius with the help of Tala. So we're going to get into my first real gripe of this episode. Now, how this plays out is Obi-Wan comes up from the water into what is an opening in the ship, basically an entryway, and a stormtrooper comes through, and he knocks out the stormtrooper, and he leaves his body laying in the pool that he just came out of. He doesn't grab his armor, doesn't choose to hide the stormtrooper. For me, oh, they're looking for Obi-Wan. They know what he looks like. So why wouldn't you A, take the armor, or B, hide the body? I have a real issue with this because it feels like they kind of just left it in there because they didn't know what to do with that particular piece in the story. So that's one of my first gripes with this episode. As Ben is looking for Leia, he discovers the Tomb of the Dead Jedi and younglings that the Empire capture over time. He discovers that after they kill these Jedi and younglings, that they display them like trophies. This was a very cool scene, as it shows just how brutal and malicious the Empire could truly be. As Tala distracts Reva, Ben is able to rescue Leia, and then another chase sequence ensues. We get glimpses during this that Ben is slowly but surely gaining back his powers, as he stops a large glass window from breaking and flooding the hall that they're in. Tala, Ben, and Leia are able to escape Fortress Inquisitorius with the help of our new side characters Wade and Sully. Unfortunately, Wade does not make it. After they escape, Vader then arrives at Fortress Inquisitorius, furious, and proceeds to force choke Reva, and she explains to him that she purposely let them go as she put a tracker on them. Vader is impressed by her cunning, and we pan back to Obi-Wan's ship, where we see Ben smiling and Leia resting on him. The camera then pans down to Leia's robot Lola, and we see the red gleam of the tracker that Reva described earlier. The screen cuts to black, and the episode ends. There were several things that I took issue with in this episode. First off, the stormtrooper sequence where Obi-Wan gets onto the ship for the first time, and the fact that he does not put the stormtrooper somewhere or doesn't take the armor, even though the Empire knows he might be coming and is on high alert. Okay? Secondly, Tala has already been seen by the Empire at this point in time. They know who she is, and she is still able to sneak back onto Fortress Inquisitorius and get Obi-Wan onto the ship, even though she's already been, known as a traitor. Thirdly, and this might be the most egregious of all, okay? It is Obi-Wan and Tala coming to save Leia. This total of 3 people, 2 adults, 1 child, okay? You have the entire Empire on high alert. Ben has already stuck in by himself and gotten Leia back once. So you're telling me that, knowing all this, the Empire just lets them walk in and take her just so they can go ahead and capture her later on? I find that very hard to believe, and it almost seems redundant and stupid. If you have already let two people get away with this once, then you're obviously not very good at your job, and you're obviously not very good at keeping a child under lock and key. That was my main issues with this episode. Now, after all my gripes, and as a whole, when I look at this episode and see what it does for the story, it really doesn't progress the story much. We're kind of halted, we're kind of stagnant, and this is more used to go ahead and get us to the next episode. As such, I have to give this episode of Kenobi a 3.5 out of 5. But alright, that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. As always, the opinions stated in this video are my own, so you don't have to agree with them, but I appreciate you sitting through the entirety of the video. Before you go, if you could do me just one more small favor, if you could please like the video and subscribe, I would really appreciate that. And as always, I will see you all tomorrow.